So would you say that what we see is connected to the structure of reality, but that the structure of reality is made up of something completely different than what we're experiencing?
Yes, it's connected, but very, very different. And so here, the informal, now I'll talk about the informal metaphor that you mentioned earlier on, which is like the a user interface on your computer, right? If you're writing an email and the icon on your desktop is blue and rectangular for some email you're writing, that doesn't mean the email itself is blue and rectangular. And if the icon's in the middle of the screen, it doesn't mean your email is in the middle of your computer. I mean, anybody who thought that just misunderstands the desktop interface. It's not there to like resemble the truth. It's there to hide the truth, which is diodes and resistors and magnetic fields and voltages. You know, you're actually toggling millions of voltages in a precise sequence to write that email. If you had to do that, good luck. If you had to do it directly, if you had to see the reality and do that directly, you'd never send your email out. So the user interface allows you to interact with reality and control the reality with the kind of precision you need, even though you're utterly ignorant. Most of us have no idea about the voltages that we're toggling. We're completely ignorant about the reality that we're actually interacting with. And so that's what evolution did. Evolution gave us our senses, you know, seeing, hearing, smelling, and so forth, as a virtual headset, so to speak. We got a headset to play the game of life, and that headset hides reality, but allows us to control objective reality in the ways that we need. So it's like if you're playing, I like the Grand Theft Auto, like VR kind of analogy. Like if you're playing a multiplayer game, I might be playing with someone in China or India or whatever around the world, and I could look over with my headset on, I'm looking over, see a red Ferrari. And my friend in China might also say, oh yeah, I see a red Ferrari. But of course, the red Ferrari is only there when I render it. When I look, the pixels appear in my headset. I then see a red Ferrari. But there's no red Ferrari in the supercomputer. And if I look away, my friend in China might say, well, I still see a red Ferrari. Well, she's seeing her red Ferrari, the one that she's creating in her conscious experience from her headset. So we have the feeling, we could have the feeling that the red Ferrari is always there, but in fact, there is no red Ferrari anywhere except in the moment of someone's perception.
So this is really fascinating, and this conversation is going to be very trippy. The Nobel Prize that was kind of recently awarded for proving that local realism is false is speaking to this, right? It's like there's that old kind of saying, if a tree falls in the woods and no one sees it, does it still make a sound? But you're saying, like, does the tree even actually exist if no one's perceiving it? So
That's right.
What are the powerful implications of proving that local realism is false? What does that mean?
Right. So that's a good point to move to, because someone might say, well, you know, it's one thing to talk about evolution, but you're talking about objects in space-time. That's not evolutionary theories, bailiwick. That's physicists. Surely the physicists will put you in your place and tell you that you're full of it. Well, but as you said, the Nobel Prize last year in physics went to 3 physicists who had done a lot of empirical work, actually verifying the predictions of quantum theory, that local realism is false. So Anton Zeilinger and John Clauser and Alan Aspect were the winners. And so local realism has 2 parts, the local and the realism. Realism is the statement that physical objects, like an electron or a proton, have definite values of their properties, like position and momentum and spin, even if they're not observed. That's realism. So things exist and have their properties even if they're not observed, which we all intuitively say, of course. And then local is the claim that those properties have influences that propagate through space-time no faster than the speed of light. You know, Einstein's got the speed limit on them. So that's local realism. And it turns out that local realism is false. And Clauser did the first experiments decades ago and didn't get the Nobel Prize because this is the kind of stuff where you really want to nail it down. So then Aspect did some more, and then Zeilinger did some more. So after decades and decades, you know, even the conservative body like the Nobel Committee says, okay, you know, game's up. Local realism is false. Now, some people will say that this doesn't rule out superdeterminism. We can talk about that if you want. But local, I think it's very, very clear in the quantum formalism that objects do not have definite values of their properties when they're not observed. Now, some people will try to wiggle out and say, well, that's for microscopic stuff, subatomic particles and so forth, but tables and chairs, that's a different story. Well, there's no one's given a principled account that says that first, quantum theory holds at all scales. So it's just false to say that quantum theory is the theory of the small and something else is the theory. It's just false. Quantum theory is the theory, quantum field theory is the theory of physics, especially, and also gravity, Einstein's gravity. So you can't say local realism is false only for small particles, but not for everyday macroscopic objects. We can talk about, the collapse of the wave function and so forth if you want. A little more, go into the weeds on it a little bit more. But if we don't want to go into the weeds, I'll just say this is true at all scales. And so what I'm saying then is that evolution by natural selection independently agrees with what the physicists just won their Nobel Prize for. It says that what you see is not the truth. You render the objects that you see on the fly, including all their properties. And that's why local realism is false. The reason it doesn't have the properties is because it doesn't even exist. The moon exists when you perceive it. And when you don't perceive it, it doesn't exist.